What's going on, guys? Ryan O'Toole back here again, giving you guys a very anticipated top 30 list. If you guys are new here, feel free to click that subscribe button and that bell notification icon for more reviews, reactions, rankings, and more movie content. The number one recommendation or comment I have been asked by many people on the social media platform are, what are your favorite films of all time? And many comments ask me, Ryan, can you make your favorite movies of all time video in a ranking video style? And it is finally here, guys. With this quarantine going on right now, it is a perfect time for me to give you guys my favorite films of all time. And I'm not doing a top 10 list, not a top 20 list, a top 30 list. My favorite films ever. This is going to be the most epic video I have ever made on my channel, and I want you guys to get down below in the comment section and let me know your favorite movies of all time, your top 10, 30, 20, whatever. Let's have a great discussion down below. Just a quick few reminders before I get started, guys. This is my list. I have not seen every single movie known to mankind. If there is a lot of great, amazing, fantastic classic movies that are left off this list, that's either because I haven't seen them or I forgot about them. This is the hardest ranking video I have ever done, guys. Putting together this list was incredibly difficult. Altogether, I had 50 movies on here, 20 honorable mentions. Now, I'm not going to reveal all of the honorable mentions in this video, or else this video is going to be over an hour long, me talking about them. So if you want to see the full top 50 list, I will have my Letterboxd link in the description below so you can see all the films in that list. This is a subjective list. This is my list. These are my favorite movies of all time. These are the films I have seen over 50 or a bunch of times that I absolutely loved growing up. Grew up with the characters, loving the fun times, the sad parts, and just the filmmaking in general. We're going to start with the honorable mentions first. I'm not going to reveal all 20 of them. I'm just going to say 5. You can check the full list, link in the description below. My first honorable mention is Batman Begins, the starting point to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Just an amazing origin story. Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne / Batman was a fantastic choice. The film really dived into the origin story of Bruce Wayne and Batman like we've never seen before. Continuing on with the comic book movie route, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the most recent animated 3D hybrid comic book movie. What a big surprise that film was. I mean, I don't think a lot of people expected that movie to be as good as it was. I mean, Shameik Moore is the voice of Miles Morales, just fantastic. I love the animation in that film. The Avengers, I mean, come on, this was like the first team-up movie that ended up being successful. The MCU just made so many incredible movies, and The Avengers was a film experience that I will never witness in a while. Just seeing these iconic Marvel superheroes teaming up, and you got big stars like Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Samuel L. Jackson, Tom Hiddleston, ScarJo. You guys know the deal. Now we're going to go into Pixar route. The Incredibles. I mean, one of the first animated superhero movies ever. Just seeing these fantastic animated superheroes team up. Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Dash, Violet, Frozone, one of the funniest animated characters ever. And finally, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. The starting point to the original Star Wars trilogy, introducing so many of the iconic characters we love with Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Chewbacca. Just such an epic space journey that George Lucas created. Those are 5 honorable mentions right there. You can go see the full list. Without further ado, let's get to the top 30. From George Miller, the Mad Max director, returns for 30 plus years later and brings us Mad Max Fury Road, one of the best action films ever made and of the past decade. You have Tom Hardy recast as Max over Mel Gibson, and Tom Hardy created such a intense version of Max that we've never seen before. And then you introduce Charlize Theron as Furiosa, one of the coolest female action stars. Such a great character. Looking forward to that spin-off film with Anya Taylor-Joy. The action sequences are some of the best in cinema. The practical effects that they used in this movie were so mind-blowing. It's baffling to me it didn't win the visual effects Oscar. Ex Machina won. But still, Mad Max Fury Road is epic. It's a lot of people's favorite action films, and it's for sure one of my favorite films. The sequel to the 1982 sci-fi classic Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott. Instead, 30 plus years later, you got Denis Villeneuve, one of the best modern filmmakers working today, directing the sequel. Now, a lot of passionate Blade Runner fans were very nervous going into the sequel, 2049, because a lot of people like me were like, Blade Runner getting a sequel? That sounds really weird. But then I saw Blade Runner 2049, and I loved it even more than the original. And I was just mind blown with this film. It was my favorite film of 2017. Ryan Gosling gives such an amazing performance as Officer K, and Harrison Ford gives his best performance since a long time. He is so good. He should have gotten nominated for an Oscar. And Ana de Armas was so great in there. This was like one of her first breakthrough roles ever since Knives Out. Blade Runner 2049 is such a gorgeous film. Speaking of Ridley Scott, my favorite film of his, Alien. In space, no one can hear you scream. Those are the iconic words of Alien. This film was just groundbreaking at its time. Coming out in 1979, Ridley Scott's Alien, about the group of astronauts getting a distress signal on the Nostromo and going to find the Xenomorph, by far the scariest creature I've seen in cinema. And Ridley Scott's direction is so fantastic in the first Alien. The scares, the Xenomorph is terrifying. And of course, Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley. In my opinion, the best female action star in cinema. I love Ripley so much. I love sci-fi and horror. You combine that together, you get one of my favorite films.
Die Hard. Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake.
Die Hard, just one of my favorite action films. Might possibly be my favorite action film of all time. It's just so classic. You got Bruce Willis as John McClane, one of the best action heroes put to cinema. Just a desperate man going to LA. He's a cop, and then his wife is working at the Nakatomi Plaza on Christmas Eve, and some terrorists break in. You got Hans Gruber, one of the greatest villains, played by Alan Rickman. Rest in peace, Professor Snape. It's so classic, and it's a great Christmas movie. And if you ask me, it's one of my favorite Christmas films of all time. Inside Out, just a fantastic animated film that dives into emotions that we go through every single day. We're happy, sad, angry a lot of times, and this film dives into emotions perfectly. And we dive into Riley's mind, and we see all these emotions controlling them. And Amy Poehler as Joy, such a fantastic voice performance. And you got sadness, anger, and fear, disgust controlling Riley. And the film talks so much more than just being a friendly kids film about how emotions can be important. You can be sad and angry at times. And this film got to me with the death of Bing Bong. So sad right there. And this film is so incredibly directed and acted. It's by far one of my favorite Pixar films. Going into this movie back in 2014 when it came out, I walked out of this film just mind blown, saying this was my favorite Marvel movie. I saw first Avenger as well in cinema and was so great about that. I'm just in love with the character of Captain America. I have a huge man crush with Chris Evans. And Winter Soldier was so great. I love the spy espionage aspects. The action is some of the best action put into the MCU. And the Russo brothers, their first MCU film, and you know what films they've gone on to direct. And you know why? Because Winter Soldier is one of the best MCU films. The Iron Giant was super underrated. Nobody really went to see that movie back in 1999. And it's become such a cult classic and one of the classic animated films that everybody talks to this day now. Love the world Brad Bird made. Vin Diesel is the voice of the Iron Giant, if you guys didn't know that. So classic, super bad. Hogarth, such a great relationship. You basically combine E.T. and other classic films about aliens and humans together and the government being against them. It's such a classic, fantastic film. If you have not seen The Iron Giant by now, what are you doing? My favorite horror film of all time, that is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance. Such a fantastic movie. My favorite Stanley Kubrick movie for sure. just the direction, Stephen King adaptation as well. The way the film opens with that iconic theme and you're just following this car to the Overlook Hotel, one of the scariest locations put in a horror film. And Jack Torrance's turn into insanity, finding out secrets about this hotel. It's so well directed, so well acted. I am baffled Jack Nicholson did not get nominated for an Oscar this year. It is such a fantastic performance. Raiders of the Lost Ark started the Indiana Jones franchise and Harrison Ford's second iconic movie role of Indiana Jones, first being Han Solo. If you say Indiana Jones is your favorite over Han Solo, I won't be mad because Indiana Jones is a classic character. In Raiders of the Lost Ark is some of the best action put to cinema with the truck chase and the Nazis seeing them burning. It's such an iconic film. Steven Spielberg, just his direction all around. And Indiana Jones' adventure of fighting the Nazis. It's so fantastic.
Jurassic Park.
At number 21 is my favorite Spielberg movie, and that is Jurassic Park. Welcome to Jurassic Park. When I first saw Jurassic Park when I was a little kid, the first scene that I saw was the T-Rex scene, and that's for sure the most iconic scene of the film, next to Welcome to Jurassic Park. But this film is so great. You guys know I love Jurassic Park. I've talked about it on my channel so much. I love dinosaurs pretty much ever since I was a kid. I collected a lot of dinosaur toys, watched Jurassic Park so many times, and Steven Spielberg just made an iconic film. And I love the cast. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, one of the most iconic characters as Ian Malcolm. I was just in awe. I thought those were real dinosaurs put on screen, and was in awe.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, one of my favorite Tarantino movies. Just so iconic, so quotable. Everybody loves Pulp Fiction. A lot of people have seen it. It's so classic. You got John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson in the cast, and they're some of the most iconic characters. And the way the film opens up with so many dialogue conversations with Tim Roth, they're shooting up the place, and then you got Vincent and Jules just talking about quarter pounders with cheese. And then you go to Bruce Willis's storyline, and then you go to the Gimp in the trunk in the basement scene. There's no real main character to this movie, and it's Tarantino style, Tarantino screenplay that broke him out into Hollywood with this film over Reservoir Dogs. This film deals with dialogue perfectly. Avengers Infinity War, directed by the Russo brothers, which is the culmination of 10 plus years of Marvel, and it perfectly catapulted with Avengers Infinity War. Such an epic, and it has one of my favorite villains with Thanos, played by Josh Brolin. What a performance Josh Brolin gave as Thanos, and what a character Thanos was. He was the main character of that movie. He had a motivation that was totally relatable and understandable. This film was just an epic. It was the first of the epics for Marvel. I mean, if the first Iron Man movie sucked, we would not get this movie and the film next. That's right, my number 18 is Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame was a perfect ending to a 22 film saga and the ending to many of our favorite MCU characters. Tony Stark. This film was just a 3-hour-long epic that paid off perfectly. I understand people had issues with the fat Thor Lebowski plotline and the smart Hulk Bruce Banner, but I love that storyline. It was cool to see something different with Thor and Hulk. Captain America wielding Mjolnir is by far one of my favorite epic moments in cinema history. I had not cheered so loud like that in a film in a while. The portal scene's iconic. Just everything in the third act is some of the best filmmaking in superhero history. But I think the film that got me hard is when Tony Stark died. I have not cried harder in any film in a while. Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, a most recent film, is in my top 30 favorite films of all time. And it's a great choice because Parasite is for sure one of my favorite films of all time. Parasite just talks about these two different families. You have the Park family as well as the Kim family. and about the rich and the poor, the upper class looking down on the lower class, and the lower class just finding ways to survive a monsoon, as well as the rich people looking at it like it's a beautiful thing going on. Bong Joon-ho's a genius. This film has so many twists that I'm not going to spoil for you if you've not seen Parasite. And if you haven't, you need to see this film.
The Sandlot. A little piece of paradise, a half a block wide, and a whole season long.
I think for sure one of my favorite sports film. This movie's so good. I love The Sandlot. Just these group of kids every single summer going to play baseball. They're part of this gang. You have that one kid, the main character, who is pretty much the outcast, doesn't play baseball. That'd be me. And then you have Benny, the leader, who is like the popular kid playing baseball. He's the pitcher. And then you have the dog over the fence and James Earl Jones playing the owner. So great. I love The Sandlot because it's so quotable, and I watched it a lot as a kid. And you're killing me, Smalls.
I will voluntarily go on a hook.
Finding Nemo. Again, a very quotable movie and a very funny and emotional film. You have some of the best animated characters put to cinema with Dory, voiced by Ellen DeGeneres. That is perfect casting right there. And you have Marlin, Nemo, Crush, Bruce the Shark. It's one of the most classic Pixar films. It's why I love so many of their films, because of Tom and Newman's score was so great. And just the characters. It has some of the most memorable side characters. And of course, Gil, voiced by Willem Dafoe. Such a really cool character. Continuing on with Pixar, coming in at number 14 is Toy Story 3. By far the conclusion to Andy's storyline. Toy Story 3 is one of the greatest emotional films I've seen in a while. It also made me cry really hard with the ending. You know what, when Andy gives his toys away. It's so great. The toys getting sent to the daycare, and you have Lotso Hugging Bear, for sure my favorite Pixar villain. What a great villain he was, and what a sad backstory that character had. And it's just so full of emotions as well as darkness I did not expect for a kids film. That incinerator scene, I was gripping the edge of my seat when I first saw that scene. And Toy Story 3 pays off with that ending.
Back to the Future.
Coming in at number 13 is the Back to the Future trilogy. 1.21 gigawatts. This is a perfect trilogy to add in here. These films I loved watching. I saw them in middle school and I was just blown away by these films. The Back to the Future trilogy, the score is iconic, and you have Robert Zemeckis' direction and the characters, Marty McFly and Doc Brown. The first Back to the Future is for sure my favorite. I love this whole entire film. And Back to the Future Part 2 is probably my least favorite, but I absolutely love it. Back to the Future 3 is a film I really enjoy. I love the Western vibes, them going to the 80s, and they're just full of 80s nostalgia. I just love the characters, love the score, and time travel as well. Time travel is awesome. These films are so great. They're epics. The J.R.R. Tolkien novel books, just so iconic. The Lord of the Rings trilogy for sure introduced many worlds and a great score all around by Howard Shore. And just the characters. I love the characters. Gandalf, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, so great. And you got Merry and Pippin in there. Fellowship of the Ring was just such a fantastic journey film with the Fellowship all going on different adventures. And you get the death of Boromir, played by Sean Bean. Sean Bean dies in everything, but Boromir is such a sad death. And then The Two Towers, probably be my least favorite of the trilogy, but it's still an epic. Helm's Deep battle was so fantastic to watch. But Return of the King is for sure my favorite. I love the length. I love everything about the film. The action is so great, and Aragorn for sure had some epic, iconic moments. And the ending just paid off perfectly. Django Unchained is such a great film, and I have a love for badass Western films, and Django Unchained is a badass Western film. Quentin Tarantino, just the dialogue in this film is some of my favorite dialogue in Tarantino. And you have Jamie Foxx as Django, such a great character, so badass as well in the action, and Christoph Waltz, their two chemistry is so great. And you have my favorite villains for sure in Tarantino. You got Leonardo DiCaprio as Calvin Candy, and you have Samuel L. Jackson. Some of the most terrifying and awesome villains in Tarantino right there. I'm just baffled Leo didn't win the Oscar over Christoph. But Django Unchained is so great. I think it's the most rewatchable Tarantino film. Before we get to the top 10 list, guys, if this is your first time checking out my channel, welcome to the channel. And if you're enjoying hearing my list so far, please hit that like button. It really helps with the algorithm. And consider clicking that subscribe button because I do tons of ranking videos on my channel, as well as movie reviews and Blu-ray stuff, tons of movie content, and I do this on a weekly basis. Okay, let's get to the top 10. Coming in number 10 is the last of the trilogies, and that is the Planet of the Apes trilogy. You got Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes. I think these films are an epic one film. I just love this trilogy. If you ask me, I think this is the best live-action trilogy since the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was such a big surprise for everybody. That film was such an epic. But Dawn of the Planet of the Apes for sure is my favorite of the trilogy. It's one of my favorite films. I love 2014 in general, and it was one of my favorite films. The special effects were just groundbreaking in that film. And you had Koba, one of the best animal villains, such a compelling villain. And War for the Planet of the Apes, the way they ended off that trilogy, how they did it, Woody Harrelson as the Colonel was so great.
Schwarzenegger. Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Terminator 2, Judgment Day, my favorite action film of all time right here. For sure, James Cameron directing this film. He did the first Terminator and Terminator 2. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger as the T-800, except this time, instead of playing the villain, he's playing the hero, protecting John Connor, Edward Furlong, and they're trying to outrun the T-1000, played by Robert Patrick, one of the best villains in cinema. The T-1000 was terrifying, but so awesome to watch. Terminator 2 just took everything on a different level into some of the best filmmaking. Just watch the thumb scene at the end and you'll know why I love this film. Logan ended off Hugh Jackman's 17-year run as the character in a perfect bow and tie. They could not have ended it off perfectly. And James Mangold's direction. I mean, this guy did Ford versus Ferrari and Walk the Line and 3:10 to Yuma. He's just one of the best directors, and I just loved everything about this film. It basically took Wolverine and his own story. It didn't even feel like a previous X-Men film. Just wipe that out. And you have Oscar-worthy performances from Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. I am still offended that they didn't get nominated because they deserved it. I don't care if it's a comic book movie. They were so good in this film. Inception just blew everybody away, including me. Bomb! Bomb! Hans Zimmer's score, for sure one of the best film scores ever composed. And Inception, just talking about dreams and how you can mess up people's dreams, go into people's dreams and change them from the real world. It's so groundbreaking. And Christopher Nolan's direction, he made one of the most original films, groundbreaking films ever. I just loved this film, and rewatching it recently bumped it up here because I just love this film altogether. I love the score and some of the sequences. For sure, one of the best action scenes is that elevator scene with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I am just still blown away to this day how that scene was filmed.
And beyond Toy Story. Look out!
Coming in at number 6 is pure nostalgia, and it's my favorite Pixar film, Toy Story. The first Toy Story film, Woody and Buzz, Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, perfect voice casting. And just this film is so quotable and so hilarious. This movie is freaking hilarious, with Woody and Buzz's rivalry at the start. But the reason this is in my top 10 is because I've seen this movie so many times and know all of the words to this film. I've quoted it so many times. I collected the toys growing up, and it's a great, funny film. This movie was hilarious. You got Sid as well, this really crazy kid. His reaction when he first sees the toys alive was so great. I love the first Toy Story film. It is such a classic. every time they say every man who comes to Shawshank Penitentiary is innocent. That's my Morgan Freeman impression. Pretty bad, right? But the Shawshank Redemption, I remember when I first saw this movie and I was just in tears. I loved everything about this film. I was inspired by it and was just moved by the performances by Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. And just this story. The story is so groundbreaking about this man, Andy Dufresne, who is framed for a murder he didn't do. And just the twists and turns this movie goes in, it's so groundbreaking and riveting to watch. I'm also a huge fan of Roger Deakins. If you can't tell, I love his cinematography in this film, how it's filmed. It didn't win the Oscar, still mind blown by how many Oscars, how many dubs this film got, how many losses. It's so groundbreaking, and some of the villains in here are iconic. The cops, as well as the warden himself. What a terrifying, creepy dude that guy was. I was a percussionist before, and I saw this film. You guys know what it is. I was just enthralled by this film from start to finish. That is Whiplash. Damien Chazelle, this was his first groundbreaking film. Then he went on to do La La Land and First Man. Got Miles Teller in here, an actor that I first saw in the Footloose remake. He wasn't that great, but he was so great in Whiplash. I was surprised he didn't get an Oscar nom. But the Oscar-winning performance from J.K. Simmons as Terrence Fletcher, one of the most asshole-ish type of roles that was perfect for J.K. Simmons since he did J. Jonah Jameson. But this was on a different level. I love J.K. Simmons' performance in here. I'm sure everybody does. How could a final act with somebody drumming be intense? And it was intense as hell. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. And I was just blown away by this film every second I was watching it. Of course, it's The Lion King. I've talked about The Lion King to death on this channel. I've always said it was my favorite Disney film and one of my favorite films. I'm sure everybody, a lot of people agree The Lion King's the best Disney film, so you don't need to hear it from me. I mean, what else can I say that hasn't already been said? I love The Lion King. The songs are super iconic. The Circle of Life, Hakuna Matata, Be Prepared. There's just so many songs that I love. Scar, best Disney villain, for sure, Jeremy Irons. And Mufasa's death, how could nobody cry from that scene? And Timon and Pumbaa, greatest comedic characters in animation. It's so great. Go watch my review for it. Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan, just what a sequel this man directed. And it's from The Joker, my favorite comic book villain for sure, and Heath Ledger's groundbreaking performance. And he did win that Oscar. He deserved it. Not just because he died. He deserved it. And not just The Joker. I've talked about Heath Ledger's performance so much on the channel. Such a great villain. With Christian Bale as Batman, just going through a different route this time than in Batman Begins. Dealing with the Joker, but as well as dealing with him being a human being. Struggling so much with Rachel Dawes. The Dark Knight, just great action, fantastic cinematography. Some of the most quotable lines from Heath Ledger's Joker. It's fantastic. What else do you need me to say?
Space adventure in the Star Wars saga, The Empire Strikes Back.
The Empire Strikes Back. When you talk about sequels that are better than the original, this for sure is the best sequel ever made, in my personal opinion. The Empire Strikes Back, it has my favorite villain in cinema history, Darth Vader, giving our heroes such a tough time, Luke, Leia, and Han. Empire Strikes Back isn't just that perfect, squeaky clean sequel where the heroes are successful at everything. No. Hoth battle was really tough for them. The Millennium Falcon hasn't been working. Their hyperdrive is destroyed pretty much this whole film. And Darth Vader is pretty much on their tail their whole entire film. The Empire is the true dominators in this film over the Rebellion. And Luke Skywalker as well. He loses that lightsaber fight because he's not ready yet. It's so great. Empire Strikes Back just twists the predictable things right out the window. So yeah, if you've been following my channel, you knew Empire Strikes Back was my favorite film of all time, and to me, it's the best film ever made. There you have it, guys. Those were my top 30 favorite films of all time. That was a lot, and I'm so happy to finally reveal that to you guys. Again, if you want to check the full list, I have my Letterboxd page down below in the description. Thank you guys, as always, for watching this ranking video. All my social media links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!